there, adventurers, and welcome to another episode of the Air Station One podcast. This is going to be a great one. This is a review of the fifth Indiana Jones movie. That's right, folks. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. It's finally here. Harrison Ford, we're not going to talk about the last one because that's wiped clean. This one, hopefully, everyone feels like made up for it. And it definitely is going to be a lot of fun to talk all about it with everybody, and we've got a great crew to do it. But before we do, of course, there will be spoilers in this episode, folks. If you haven't seen the movie yet, or you don't want to be spoiled for it, if you have no interest in seeing it and everything, and there's plenty of people who have no interest at it and they're going, oh, it sucks, I don't want to go see it and everything, it is going to be talked about all over, and we're not going to try to keep any stone unturned or any dial not turned. So it's going to be a ton of fun. Let's say hey, of course, to Mr. Mike Gordon.
Howdy.
And of course, returning to the show, ToniAnn Marini. Welcome.
Greetings, everyone.
And Mr. Matt Sweatman is here.
Why did it have to be snakes?
Snakes. Oh, it could have, eels are just like undersea snakes. So it's just like, we got those in this one too. So it's even better.
Exactly.
So awesome, folks. It's going to be a fun movie to talk about. And, definitely let's just take it away. Let's dive in with both feet.
All right. Let's, before we talk about box office and this movie in particular, I want to get a sense of where everybody stands on the franchise. And I want to start with you, ToniAnn, because I understand that you are really new to this franchise.
I am. I started on Friday.
It's amazing to me.
Wow.
So I had seen bits and pieces of the third one. Like I knew some of the parts, I'd caught them on TV or my cousins were watching them, but I'd never seen it all from start to finish.
Can I ask, is there a particular reason, or you just hadn't got around to it?
No, just hadn't. There's so much stuff. For about 10 years in college, I didn't watch TV or movies or any that. I just had a lot of stuff going on. So I've been slowly building up the holes in my
understandable.
Yeah, in my knowledge. And this was and it was one that I like to watch a series. So if I'm gonna watch it, I'm gonna watch it from the beginning. And it just, at that point, there were 3 movies, and I just was trying to fit in a trilogy somewhere. And then there was a 4th movie, and it just, but two of the wonderful people in my life wanted to see the 5th movie. And so I said, well, we're going to have to marathon the first 4. And so we did. We did 2 on Friday and 2 on Saturday. And then we had a brunch showing of Dial of Destiny on Sunday.
Awesome. And what are your thoughts on the franchise as a whole? Going into this one, were you excited? Are you do you see what all the hype was about, or do you understand that, or what do you feel about it now?
Yeah, I definitely do. I think there were a lot of highs and lows for sure. And I was definitely interested to see, because so much time had passed. I think it's been 15 years since
the last one. Yeah.
Yeah. Which was also the Crystal anniversary that they said in the theater, which I thought was funny because it was Crystal Skull.
Crystal Skull, yeah.
Yeah. I was anticipating watching it. I wasn't like, oh, I got to watch another one. I was very happy to be seeing another one and to see where they went and to see how they dealt with him aging, because they clearly did that in the 4th movie. And, there were a whole lot of, I was interested to see who they brought back, if they brought back anybody with him romantically, because there was always the banter with the women, if he had a sidekick. So there were things I was anticipating or was interested in learning more about.
Right. So which a lot of those things would have been lost on you probably if you hadn't watched the other 4. Right.
Right.
And yeah, because that's one thing for people to be like, man, you need to see this. I can't believe you haven't seen this. But it's another thing when one of them is widely regarded as one of the best movies made of all time. I mean, I can imagine that you going to finally sit down and watching it, you're just like, all right, impress me. I mean, it must be hard to live up to that.
I think it can be in some things. I love adventure movies and I like, mythology and to see where they bring religion and like, walking that fine line and what things are real or what things they can do with movies. So I never go into something being like, okay, everybody's talked all this good stuff about it. Like I try to go in with an open mind. I did that with Star Trek because I had never watched it before like 3 years ago.
Right.
So I'm like I said, I'm filling in all those gaps in my knowledge, and I'm trying to watch them with fresh eyes. Some of the things I understand if I watched them 20 years ago, I was not that old 20 years ago, so I may not have appreciated some of those things. So I like where I am now, where I could look at different things with a different eye. But I could also say, well, okay, that was made in a certain time and I understand what was happening then. Like, I'm not like, oh, that's, misogynistic or that's this and I can't, but like, I sort of understand like they did better throughout the series and and I especially like what they did in this movie with the female lead. So.
Okay, well, we will talk all about that for sure. I've made no qualms about the fact that Raiders of the Lost Ark is my favorite movie of all time. Some of the other follow-ups to that, I'm mixed on. I am not a big fan of the second movie. I like the third one a lot, and I was going to do a rewatch of everything. But as it got closer and closer to the date of release for Dial of Destiny, I just found I didn't have the time. But I did the night before watch Kingdom of the Crystal Skull simply because it had been 15 years since I'd seen it. And I wanted to know if Dial of Destiny was going to be better or worse than it. And there was no way for me to accurately, I think, reflect on that unless I'd seen it again. And like you said, ToniAnn, with fresh eyes, with or more experienced eyes. Time has passed, right? So yeah, I did want to, and I do still think Crystal Skull is bad. I do think it is bad. Any thoughts about the series going into this particular movie from you, Matt?
Yeah, like most people of our generation, Raiders of the Lost Ark was a seminal piece of cinematic art. And the original trilogy of movies were part of our childhood and young adulthood. I don't remember a whole lot about number 4. I still have the Blu-ray when it was released at home unopened. I saw it in the theater, and that's still the last time I've seen it. So I was hopeful that this would be a return to form. Certainly, at least it had to be an improvement on the last one. So it somehow, even though it's been 89 since we had last had a really good Indiana Jones story, it was still one of the top franchises, in my opinion. And I was still excited to see it. Elaine went and saw it with me. She doesn't go and see every movie with me in the theater. So that was a good thing. I was able to enjoy it with her. And I'm still processing a little bit my overall opinion of it. And I'm glad to see that the buzz from viewers, not from critics necessarily, but from viewers, isn't all bad. It's actually getting quite a lot of people out there who are really enjoying it. And whatever I think of it, it's just good to see that Indiana Jones still can get approval from audiences today. So I'm glad of that.
Yeah. Mike, what about you? Any thoughts on the franchise going into this?
Yeah. Go see the odd number movies of Indiana Jones.
And it's weird because as this has come out, certainly everybody has different views on the franchise themselves. I've seen a lot of people that love the second one. I've seen a lot of people that think the third one is the best one. I've seen people that like Crystal Skull. So, it's across the board. There's no unanimous thoughts on this franchise whatsoever. So going into this movie, of course, it wasn't going to be unanimous. And the way, as divisive as things are on the internet now, so going into the movie, which finally opened here in this country, it had been open. I think it had been shown at Cannes almost 2 months ago at the Cannes Film Festival, and it did not get a great reception there. So the word of mouth has been bad on this movie for quite some time. And that I think has affected the box office. The box office is very weak. Not as weak as Flash was a couple weeks ago, but still the opening weekend was just 72.4 million in the United States and worldwide gross of 142.5 million. That is not going to do well for my prediction. Our prediction, Mike, that it's going to be the biggest box office movie of the summer.
Oh, after starting to hear some of the reviews that came out of Cannes and some of the other showings of it, I was like, oh, well, egg on my face once again. So it's okay.
I think this movie has definitely, well, I think everything this summer, except for Spider-Verse, has been underperforming. So I think that's part of it. As far as any other ideas onto why this one is not doing well in the theater, because the theater, I was surprised when I went to pre-order my ticket for Friday morning, there was only one ticket sold in the whole theater. And when I walked into the theater, there was nobody else in there. There was about a handful of people that walked in right before the movie started. But pretty much it was an empty theater, and that's never happened to me when I've seen Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny in Indiana Jones movie the first weekend, and never has happened to me. So that was a surprise.
But it's interesting too, because I had the complete opposite actually, because today we went to go see it literally 3 hours ago, and because I'd been traveling and we didn't have a chance to see it while I was on vacation, and we went today, and the theater we usually go to is 90% of the theater is empty. Usually when we go, it's just the theater itself. And today is the largest screening I've gone to at this theater. And this was a 2:30 show that we went to, and there were only like maybe 5 seats in the whole theater empty. And it was their big theater, which so it's pretty.
I think it also. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think it also sort of depends on. So, like, we went to go see it at a Alamo Draft House because they were doing like a commemorative glass, and so that was a draw. And when we went to go buy tickets Thursday and Friday, or Friday and Saturday, whatever days they were already sold out. So that's why we had to do a Sunday brunch. Because we couldn't get any tickets for that. I'd never been to one. We have one in Raleigh. I just didn't know it existed. And I heard from some other folks that had like an Alamo in there, that like, ooh, I could get like this glass, and that was a cool thing. And so that was maybe a draw for people. But I definitely think that it's hard to go to the movies sometimes now after COVID. Like, I like to pause, right? And if I have to go to the bathroom or something, and you have to take a considerable amount of time to get to the theater, and if your theater doesn't have like where you pick your seat, then you have to go and pick a seat and things like that. And I think for some people, maybe the magic of going to the movies might be, it'll just come out on streaming in a couple months and I'll see it then. And I think that could be maybe a reason why people are maybe not going to the movies as much. But I heard they did a lot of like reshoots for this movie, and that there were all sorts of like rumors of what they were doing. And I think that could have maybe caused some people to be like, oh, I heard it was about this, when that wasn't even in the movie. And then they just decided, they made up their minds that they weren't going to go. So
I mean, yeah, there could have been a lot of factors. And I think they all were combined for the gross that we got, for sure. Other things are, as much as I love the franchise, the last one as you said, was done 15 years ago, and that was not well regarded. So, I mean, this is a franchise that a lot of people, it still had a bad taste in their mouth from the last one. And some people didn't even know. I mean, there's a whole few generations that grew up in just Indiana Jones was not their hero. I mean, we are talking about an 80-year-old actor playing a 70-year-old character. So, in a 50-year-old franchise or something like that, right? 40, 50-year-old, something like that.
40.
So there's a lot of factors there. So knowing all of this, and I think I kind of got an idea already, but knowing all this, what were your thoughts coming out of the movie? Was it satisfying? ToniAnn, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I had a good time watching the movie. There were parts that I cried on. There were parts where I laughed. There were parts where I jumped out of my skin because, water snakes and other things that were happening. I get very jumpy at movies. So if you don't like somebody next to you going, then don't sit next to me in a movie ever. But I mean, there were a lot of emotions happening and the movie kept me engaged. There wasn't a part where I was like, okay, can we not? Like when in watching was it The Last Crusade where they did the young Indy?
Yes.
Yes, at the beginning.
Okay. Yeah, that part was just so long to me in the beginning. Like they could have made and I was like, okay, what am I watching? Like what's happening? So I didn't have any of that in this movie, which was nice. And so when I left, I was like, that was a good use of my time. Like I didn't feel like I needed my time back, like I have in some other movies.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Oh, we got a kind of a young Indy starting this one too.
I was about to say the same thing.
Well, at this point, he was
yeah, I know.
Older. He was his sassy self, and he was punching Nazis. So I mean, how could you not?
I mean, that's always
like
cool,
that,
right?
Right? When there's not
that
punching
never goes
Nazis
out of style.
involved, right? Yeah. So he was. I enjoyed that. I will say that I thought it was going to be more of a flashback, that first part, instead of like a longer scene. But once I realized where it was going and how it was going to connect later, I appreciated the length of it.
Right. Matt, what about you? How did you feel about this movie overall?
Well, leaving the theater, I did have some reservations. I felt a little bit like I felt leaving the theater when I saw Crystal Skull. I did like the opening bit, even if the voice wasn't quite younger Indiana Jones. At least the CG was fairly well done, and it was a very action-packed scene. Somewhere around the 2/3 point of the movie, I actually fell asleep. Not to say the movie caused that. That might have been more of just it had been a long day at work kind of situation. We saw it Thursday evening. And the next thing I know is that they're doing some time traveling hijinks, and I'm thinking, okay, is this going to be like the aliens in Crystal Skull? Is this going to be what people say? This is not Indiana Jones. There's no time travel in Indiana Jones. So I felt a little weird about it, and I really don't want to. I don't want to knock it too bad for that because I love Indiana Jones and I really want to give this one another chance. I think I'm going to, when it comes home, I'm going to both watch Kingdom of the Crystal Skulls and this one again and try to give them another chance to wow me over because I really want to love this movie. I desperately want to.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Some things just can't be loved. Some things sometimes it just doesn't work out. But no, I definitely feel like you should, watch the whole thing to give it a full chance. Mike, what about you? What did you think of coming out of this?
I actually was really surprised at my reaction of coming out of this. It was like I fully went in very skeptical and I actually left with a smile on my face. I thought, okay, this was a fun popcorn movie. And that's what you want from an Indiana Jones movie. And it's like, I'm not expecting Shakespeare. I'm not expecting, War and Peace. I'm not expecting some literary, whatever. And I enjoyed the additions. I enjoyed the anti-aging that they did at the beginning. And I agree about the voice, but I thought they finally got the de-aging down. It looked like I was watching a flashback to Indiana Jones, probably circa, 1989, Harrison Ford. That's how good it looked. And it was great. And I loved watching him beat up Nazis. So how bad could this movie be? And it was a satisfying finish. and I loved just, being able to hear other people gasp at like the eels and some of the other things, but there was death and carnage in it, but not stupid dark death and carnage like the anthill in Crystal Skull and stuff like that. I thought at least this was fun and I enjoyed it. That's how I'll end it.
I enjoyed it overall as well. Now, look, if I tried to, Michelle asked me this. She's like, "So did you like it?" And I said, "Yes, I liked it. I thought it was pretty. It was pretty good." And because she did not see it with me, and she hasn't seen any of the Indiana Jones movie, including Raiders of the Lost Ark. She still hasn't seen that. Yeah, I don't know why we're still together. But maybe because if she watches it and doesn't like it, then that'll be the end. But in any case, she's like, I heard it was really, really bad. I mean, the word online is that it's garbage. And I said, well, it just depends on what you compare it to. If you compare Dial of Destiny to Crystal Skull, I think it's brilliant. It's like one of the best movies ever made. If you compare it to Raiders of the Lost Ark, it's garbage. I mean, it's like, but that's so many other movies too, right? Like it's just, if I judged everything based on the movies that I liked, then, they don't stand a chance a lot of times. So that's a hard bar to match, I think, to meet up with. So, but I think overall Dial of Destiny was pretty good. I think the object that they were looking for was interesting. I think the third act, I know, again, we are talking about spoilers here, but I know the third act, where they finally like engage the object, the Dial of Destiny, and they go back in time. That's a big swing. That's a big swing. One of the biggest swings Indiana Jones franchise has ever taken. And I applaud that. I think it worked a lot better than I don't blame them for going for the alien swing and Crystal Skull. I just don't think it was realized half as well as this was. It's hard seeing characters I love, like Indiana Jones, broken. It's just difficult for me. And when this movie starts, Indy is broken. He's in a bad place. It's kind of like watching, the Force Awakens and seeing all my heroes that I like from the Star Wars franchise broken and not doing well and having problems, et cetera, et cetera. It's very difficult for me. But we do see Indiana Jones kind of come out of it. This is his journey. The best Indiana Jones movies to me, yeah, it's really cool when he has a cool device to look for or a cool object, but when they're really about him learning something. In the first movie, he's learning about love. He's learning about the supernatural. I mean, at the beginning of the movie, he has neither. And at the end of the movie, he has both. That's why I think the second movie doesn't do well. I don't think he really evolves at all in the second movie. In the third movie, he has that relationship with his father that is so compelling, more compelling than, and in Crystal Skull, they tried to give him something, the relationship with his son and everything, but it doesn't work. To me, it didn't work as well. But this one, it's like watching Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, and Kirk going through the same thing. He's getting old. How does he still do it? How does he still go on when he doesn't feel he has anything more to offer?
Can I say something real quick, though? It's
absolutely.
Because, how you said in the second one, he didn't learn anything. The second one was technically a prequel to the first one.
True, but it's still, I mean, he could still learn something.
Oh,
exactly. He doesn't. Like, I don't, yeah.
I agree completely with you there, Mikey. And it's just interesting because this one, he was ready to give up at the very end. And, literally, he wanted to stay in the past. And, he said, I don't have anything back in the future for me. I don't have anything to live for. No. I just want, this is where I belong. And, it just took a right hook to knock him out of that one.
Yeah, because he's been living in the past like all that time. In the beginning, he's still living in the past. He's regretting the loss of his son. He's teaching, and the classes that he's teaching, the places that they just don't care. He's a relic. He's a man of the past. He's just not. We just went in 1969. They're celebrating going to the moon. how exciting is that? And he could care less. Like, he is not interested in the future. He's not interested in the present. He's got nothing. And by the end, you know, he finds that he does have something to live for. And once again, it's Marion. And I love that. I love that aspect of this movie. The last 5 minutes of the movie where he's reunited with Marion, and they do the
where doesn't it hurt?
Where doesn't
it hurt? They go back to that again.
I cried a whole lot.
How can you not, right?
Yeah. and having it just be fresh in my head,
all right,
and knowing exactly where that was going, that really sort of sold it for me, because I didn't care if I knew it was coming, because it lived up to my expectations in that moment.
Yes.
And it wasn't too corny and it wasn't too cheesy. It was very them. But I think you're 100% right that it's hard to see our heroes like that, because it makes them more human. And we don't always want to relate to our heroes. We want them to be on this pedestal, and we want them to be better than us, or not having our problems. And I think what's hard, as someone who is an educator, is seeing the difference between when students are really engaged and when they just don't give any sort of interest. They don't have any sort of interest, whether they're in the wrong major or whether they think the class doesn't apply to them. And so that scene broke my heart, seeing him in the classroom.
I hope you haven't experienced that yourself.
Oh, I have, but that's okay.
That's pretty brutal. That scene where he's teaching.
The problem is that you see in the scenes from the first movies where the girls were in love with him and the boys wanted to be him and everybody was so excited, and then to have like not a single person care, and maybe it was just because it was Moon Day and they all wanted to be outside, not stuck in the classroom.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I don't think so, but even so, I mean, I've had that where there's like a handful of people who just like could not care, and you try to engage them, and that was heartbreaking to see him have to go through that, especially on his retirement day, or when he was getting close to retiring, not having anybody care about their grade. I mean, that really brought it sort of home to me. But I was glad they put that in, because it shows how you are in your career. When you're older and there's this subject you've been teaching all your life, you lose a little passion for it, and the people you're trying to teach kind of sense that, I think, sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think a lot of people, word gets around campus like, oh, you don't want to have that professor because he's not interesting, or he's phoning it in or whatever. Yeah. And it seemed like the people that were just there for the credit. They're just there for the credit. Let's talk about Indy and Harrison. I mean, a lot has been made of this 80-year-old guy playing this character. One of the criticisms that it's not doing well is that nobody wants to see an old man as an action hero. When they use it, when it's part, like, they're not trying to, I mean, granted, they shaved 10 years off of him as a character. He's supposed to be around 70, I guess, in this, but it still doesn't, I think Harrison Ford still is amazing to watch. I still think he brings it. The dude is in shape. Like, I mean, I'm like, wow. I mean, I know a lot of the scenes, in the action sequences, it's either CG or stuntman or whatever. But to be honest with you, a lot of those in the early movies were stuntmen too. I know Harrison Ford likes to do his own stunts, but, as we've seen in making of this movie, that kind of gets him hurt sometimes, right? So I do feel like there was more practical stunts in this movie than there were in Crystal Skull. I know that there was a lot of CG, of course, but I feel like there were more practical stunts. Like, Crystal Skull feels like it's all CG. Like, they just filmed everything in front of a green screen. Whereas this, I felt like they were actually in places and doing things. Not maybe all the time, but enough that I was like, okay, this is how movies are made now anyway. You're not going to get a fully practical movie. But Matt, we'll start with you. How did you feel about Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones? Does he still bring it?
I think his acting chops are still there. He still feels like Indiana Jones, attitude wise, emotionally wise. But he's no Tom Cruise. He's not out there. He's not able to perform that level of physicality at Indiana Jones needs.
Yeah, let's face it. Nobody is a Tom Cruise.
Well, yeah, he's a freak of nature. Absolutely. And it did feel like this was, he's a bit of a curmudgeon, Harrison Ford is, and it comes through a little bit in the character. And I think that enhances the character because I think it's a good attitude for the character who's seen that much to be a little jaded. But it does sometimes feel like he wants to look at the audience and saying, really, do I have to do this again? Can you just leave me alone? I'm getting tired. I'm getting too old for this. And it really does feel like, yes, okay, this is the last time he's going to be able to do Indiana Jones front and center. And I think we have to come to terms of, do we want Indiana Jones to continue with another character, with another actor, or do we want to let the franchise lie? Because I think other than maybe a cameo or introduction or something, I think Harrison Ford is done. And I think at his age, I think that would be for the best.
Yeah, a lot of things about that. Well, at the end, we'll talk about maybe the future of the franchise. But because I've got some thoughts on that, as I'm sure you guys all do. Yeah, I think you're right. And it's a good point too, because this is a character that Harrison Ford has played more than any of the other characters. I mean, he hasn't even played Han Solo as much as he's played Indiana Jones, right? So I think there's more of him, Harrison Ford, in Indiana Jones than almost any other role he's ever played. And certainly that is reflected. I mean, I don't think Harrison is as broken as Indy is in this movie, but yeah, some of that, leave me alone, that doesn't like talking to the press, doesn't like doing a lot of that stuff, et cetera, like a very private person, comes across as Indiana Jones like in a lot of ways. So there's a lot of similarities there. Mike, how do you feel about Harrison Ford in this role?
Harrison Ford plays it perfectly because he's an elderly man and he is playing a character who has been doing these adventures and seeing things and living life to the fullest for since the mid-30s, and as an adult. And it was just interesting because this is 1969, and so this is pretty amazing. This is going on almost like 35 years in that timeline, and your body takes a beating. And every time you saw him try to jump, try to punch somebody, chase after someone, you could see the aches and pains that he was going through. And it was really a lot of fun to see that. And I agree what you said, more practical effects than in Crystal Skull. A lot more practical effects. The scenes like, the chase scene driving through the market in the Middle Eastern village, and it was just real interesting to see that more than going through a jungle with CGI ants and stuff. And I think this worked a lot better, and I loved the scenes like going through the parade was just awesome on horseback, and then cutting through, it wasn't believable, him, taking the horse through the subway line and everything. And it was fun. And I was grinning like a kid again, ear to ear, watching this. And Harrison Ford played it perfectly. He was a more mature Indiana Jones. He stopped and he had to mourn for these people, his co-workers at the school when they got shot. The guy who, Antonio Banderas's character, the ship captain, and like his goddaughter was like, "Come on, let's go. What's going on?" He says, "That was my friend." You wouldn't have seen that in Indiana Jones back in the first or second movies at all. But it just shows a maturity, and I just thought it was a very interesting way to do it.
Absolutely. The only other thing I want to add about Harrison Ford is I was really afraid that, and this didn't even occur to me until I was talking to my cousin Bill, who also really, really loves this franchise. And he pointed out the idea that in order to get Harrison Ford back, they were going to kill Indy. I mean, we all kind of know behind the scenes or have heard behind the scenes that that's what happened with Han Solo. Like the only reason that Harrison Ford did Force Awakens is because if let me kill him off, and then I don't have to worry about this anymore. The Daniel Craig Bond franchise, he only came back so he could die, that kind of thing. And I will say, going into this, even towards the end of the third act, I was like, "Oh damn, they're going to kill him. They're going to kill him. That's going to suck." I am so glad they didn't. I'm so glad they didn't. I don't know if Harrison Ford wanted that or not, but in any case, I'm glad they didn't do that because that would have killed me. That would have crushed me, I think. I don't like that idea at all. But let's talk about some of the other characters. We don't have time to get into every single one of them. So, Mike, I'm going to start with you. Who's your favorite secondary character or one that you at least want to talk about that was in this?
Oh, Helena Shaw has to be my favorite secondary character in it.
Now, were you familiar with Phoebe Waller-Bridge before this?
Oh, yeah. I watched the other show that she had that was really, really pretty amazing.
Fleabag?
Yep. And, and I enjoyed it. It wasn't my favorite show in the world, but I respected her because she created it, she wrote it, and she started it. And I knew other projects she had worked on. And I thought the addition of her as a younger, like goddaughter was perfect. And she fit the role perfectly. And I like how she was morally gray. She wasn't good or bad. She was like, and she became more towards the good as the story went on. And, because, she was realizing this is bigger than me. This is something we have to protect for society and everything. And because there were times at the beginning, after she, took the dial from Indy and it was like, oh, she's a scumbag. She's working with the bad guys or anything. But no, she was, had her own intentions and everything. And I was curious to see what they were going to do with her. And I thought they handled that really, really well.
Any other thoughts on Helena by anybody else?
She was, she was a excellent, you never knew what was going to happen or what she was going to do. So I really sort of appreciated that sort of grayness, like Mike just said. I had no idea where she was going to end up or what was going to happen. And so I kept really paying attention to like, what is she doing in the background if she wasn't, the main person in the scene or to see if I could get any clues as to where she was going.
I enjoyed her very much. I'm not sure how I still feel about, her going back and forth in terms of like, she seems like she turns heel at one point and then she's not. And then it's sort of wishy-washy through the whole thing. But I did like the performance overall. I would give her character, like if we're talking about, indie companions, particularly female ones, she's probably second to Marion in as far as the rest of the franchise goes for me. Matt, any more thoughts on her?
Just that making her kind of a gray morally, I think fit her in this movie, but probably doesn't set her character up as a successor to Indiana Jones very well, if that's the intention. And I'm sure we'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that either. Also, I'm glad, it should go without saying, but I'm really glad. I mean, there's a few decades ago, this would not have been the case. I'm glad she wasn't a love interest. We've seen, unfortunately, Hollywood has a very bad record when it comes to like very old men with very young women, and I'm glad that this is not one of them. So all right, Matt, another character that you liked in the movie.
Well, you always have to like Sala.
Oh God, it's so great to see him. It was awesome.
But I do think it plays along with a little bit of the "we're getting too old for this" theme that I sense throughout the movie, where they introduce him. He happens to be living nearby with his family. Indy helped get him out of Egypt, and he goes. He takes Indiana Jones to the airport. He has his passport. He's ready to go. And when Indiana Jones says, "No, you stay here," he's like, "Okay, give him hell." And that's it. I mean, his whole role in this movie is to literally drive Indiana Jones to the airport. Can you think of a better role for an elderly person in any movie?
Well, at least he still has his license.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes,
yeah.
Absolutely.
He's a cabbie, so it fulfills that role. To be honest with you, I mean, like, look, the times that we've seen Sala before, I don't know how much of a huge help he was overall. Sometimes, not to his fault, but yeah. So I get it, but yeah, it's nice to see him again too, I think.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on seeing Sala from anybody?
I loved it. I just thought, he was like almost like a good intermediary. Like Matt had said, it was great that he was the one that pushed Indy to go out of the country, to go out and do, instead of him going to the police or something and, letting the government handle it. I thought, that it made sense. It was his friend from movie number 1 and movie number 3 to help push him on for number 5. And then I loved at the end, it's like, oh, he isn't gone. He's still all there. And it was great. I thought it was really, really great.
I do wish that he would have been able to go with them so that in the caves when they were trying to like figure out what the hurricane point was, just to hear John Rhys Davies sing in the cave. I feel like that would have been fantastic because he sang in every other movie. So like just a missed point there. And I do love when going back a little bit to like a good indie moment when he was climbing the cave and she's like, "You're not moving." And he's like, "Give me a minute. I'm old." Like I feel like there were some really good points where they talked about, his age and stuff. But I really enjoyed Mason, I think her name was, the black agent who was sort of undercover. Like, I was really shocked when they killed her. Like, I thought she was going to be recurring throughout the, and I just was like, I was gobsmacked when they turned around. It makes sense now having time to, but in the moment, I did not see that coming at all. And I was really sad because she kept being like, "No, don't shoot that." Like, she was like the voice of reason and sort of, the like, keeping them in check. And then I was like, oh, the bad guys are gonna like really go overboard now.
Yeah. They're gonna get full on bad guy now.
Right. And then they did. Right. But Mads Mikkelsen was just fantastic. He was very focused. He was very driven. Once he realized that like where the dial was, he was like, "I don't care about the president and I don't care about this thing. And I don't care if people know I'm a Nazi." Like he started to like fall apart right away because this thing that he'd been looking for so many years was now close. And they really showed his descent into madness, like really well. And at the last minute when he's like, oh, maybe he's right. Maybe I did miscalculate. Maybe I was like not using my science brain, and he panics. He was really like, you could see all that. And I thought that was just, he was a really good bad guy.
Yeah, I would put Mads up there. Mullet is one of the best bad guys they've had in the franchise.
I agree with that. And it's interesting too, because I wonder if they were basing his character like off of Von Braun, who helped develop the rockets for,
I'm sure that was part
everything
of it,
to get people to the moon and everything. So it was just very, very interesting to see that. And I like how, they introduced him very briefly at the very beginning and then, later.
Yeah, I really liked him a lot. And, I'm glad that, he's all about like bringing the party back. Like, he's still, even though things have changed, he's still a Nazi and he wants to bring it all back. That's why he doesn't care who knows or whatever. Cause he's like, I'm going to change history and we're going to win.
But I also liked how it wasn't about I'm all for the Fuhrer and I'm gonna bring back like he was like, no, I saw every mistake he made and I'm gonna do it better, because that is a level of arrogance that only Nazis can have, right? Like that. And he was just like, because a lot of what you see, or a lot of what you maybe have read in history, is how everybody just had this their rose-colored glasses for Hitler, and how they thought he could do no wrong, and you know, how he was just the man and he was amazing. And this guy was like, no, okay, I like where he was going, but he did it all wrong and I'm just going to do it. But like, you don't see a lot of that coming out of Nazi Germany. And so that level of arrogant, like, made it like he was so compelling. I mean, wrong, he super compelling.
You can tell he sort of is having those thoughts in the beginning, in the first act too. Like he's not completely just stepping in line blindly, like so many of his other compatriots are. Yeah, very good, very good. So yeah, Voller, definitely one of my favorite characters as well. And I agree. I thought that Mason was interesting, but ultimately you could have cut her out of the movie and it wouldn't have made any difference. I thought it was kind of a shame, you know. I mean, she's so cool looking and she does seem to be a voice of reason, but they don't do much with her. And, you know, since this is one of the very few characters of color that is in the franchise, I think that's a really disservice to on a whole bunch of levels. But with the point that she's in there, she's badass, and I don't blame ToniAnn Marini Wilson for that. She does a great job, and hire her people because she's cool.
Yeah, well, and that was the other. It was not like the people of color that they used in the second movie, right? It was not for a it was for an appropriate reason. Like that's what they did. The CIA hired people to infiltrate, you know, the Black Panthers, and that. So like you could tell like her character belonged there, and she did such a great job. And I was just upset that they didn't do more with her, like you said.
Yeah, that took me by surprise as well. All right, so we're running low on time. Is there anything else about this movie in particular that you want to speak about before we move on, Matt?
Just that. Shoot, I forgot where I was going. The time travel element still it bugs me a little bit, because it doesn't feel. It's always you know, mystical or religious, and it usually doesn't delve into hard science fiction. I thought it was just an odd choice to actually physically send them into time. I would have been more okay if they had somehow showed a portal where they saw other time, or even somebody came through to their time. It just seemed odd to me that they traveled in time. It's just, I don't know, maybe it shouldn't bother me, but it just does for some reason. I'm not sure why.
I thought it was pretty cool though, that, you know, because when they found the body, you know, the skeleton, it had the watch on it.
I thought that was Indy. I thought they set that up, that, you know, with Indy looking for his dad's watch or whatever. I thought, oh man, that's going to be Indiana Jones in that coffin. Damn you guys. But I'm so glad it wasn't.
No. And I also love that basically the stand had the propellers on it and everything. And it like, oh, history, this is how it happened. Instead of him actually coming from into the future, getting the watch, seeing airplanes and everything, this is how it came about. And I thought it was really smartly done with that part.
Yeah, the fact that it was one-way trip, that it was planned to get help, to help out with Syracuse, I thought was interesting. And there are a lot of issues with this movie, I'm not going to lie. But ToniAnn, is there anything else you want to say about the movie before we move into the future of the franchise?
I will say I sort of like that tiny subplot with Raheem, and how he was like madly in love with Helena, and how he was supposed to kill her, but then he just wanted to save her. And like there was that whole like, because I liked that it was not the woman who was being like, it was like a nice little difference.
It was flipped. The script was flipped.
Yeah. And I thought they did it really well, that he was just like so in love with her and was not seeing any of the signs that she was using him or any of that. And just the little quips in there about like, oh, I just, owe him some bail money and a lifetime of happiness, like explaining how she broke off her engagement without going into that whole, like, I just really liked how they did that. And I thought that was a little fun little subplot.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike, any final thoughts on this one before we move on to the future?
It's, for me, the final thoughts are, it had a great supporting cast. The henchmen were great. They were awesome, especially that giant one. I was just waiting for, Indiana Jones doing one of those things, punching him in the face, and him like barely moving or something like that. And he got taken out by the little kid, of all things, which was just really interesting. And, it was really nice. This was a good popcorn movie, and I'm not like Crystal Skull, which I've only seen twice. I'm going to watch this one over and over again. That's how much I enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, I definitely am still like you, man. I'm still processing through a lot of it. So I think that this is definitely worth, I won't mind going back and watching this one. Watching this one. The only other thing I want to say about it, and I can't sign off until I do, is thank goodness that we get another score from John Williams. This is his last score, probably, period. But it sounded so good. The Indiana Jones theme is one of my favorite themes of all time. He weaves the Marion theme into this. He weaves some other themes from the Indiana Jones movies and from some of his other movies too in this. I have full respect for John Williams more than anything else, and this is his last score, and I was more than happy. I knew there wasn't a post-credit scene, but I was more than happy to just sit and watch the credits and listen to John Williams music for like 6-10 minutes, whatever it was, while the credits roll, because I'm just not going to do that. That's not going to happen again. So
one thing that I felt like was missing, I will say this, was because it was more of a Disney Lucasfilms joint instead of a Paramount.
First one
was the traditional mountain.
Yeah,
at the beginning
we don't get the mountain because Disney says nope. We get the castle, right?
Exactly.
The castle starts the movie. It's like, what? That's it. Not okay. That is weird. But it does check a lot of the other boxes. But yeah, we know that John Williams is not going to be back. We know that Harrison Ford's not going to be back, but we don't know. I mean, I find it hard to believe that Indiana Jones is gone, that there won't be other Indiana Jones adventures of some kind. ToniAnn, we'll start with you. What do you want to see? What do you think we'll see?
Whatever happened to Short Round? I think that would be a great miniseries.
That guy's hot now. That actor is hot now. You give him an Oscar. Like if this was made today instead of like 3 years ago, he's in this movie.
Yeah. No, it's there were definitely some characters throughout the series that I'd like to know more about, and so if they had like Indiana Jones-esque adventures, or had mentioned like, he trained me and so I could do these things in other parts of the world. We saw Indiana Jones go to the desert. But there are other sorts of climates, right? We saw him go in South America. Okay, well, what about other places, right? So I think that would be kind of cool. But I'm definitely team Short Round. So
that's good. Yeah, I mean, he could have definitely filled the Sala role. In fact, because it doesn't he drive the car in Temple of Doom? He starts off. You see him as a kind of a cab driver or whatever.
Yes. Yeah.
So I mean, that could have. Not that I think his character should just be relegated to being a cab driver, but I do think that. And in some ways, that would have made more sense if he had driven him to the airport and he was the one that was like, I want to go with you. Because Indiana Jones telling Sala to stay back, that's one thing. But if he was telling Short Round to stay back, he'd be like, whoa, I mean, he could help you because he's young, right? Like, or younger.
But I feel like but the thing is, if he was in there, I would have felt like it would have taken away from his goddaughters.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Yeah. You would have had to, It would have had that, like where you get in Doctor Who sometimes, you would have had that 3 companion problem. Too many companions to be able to treat them all well. Matt, what do you want to see from Indiana Jones? Do you want to see him back? Does Indiana Jones die with Harrison Ford, so to speak? Or is this a franchise that can continue without him?
Well, when money's involved, they'll find a way to make it continue. And the movie not doing well doesn't speak well for that. But I mean, I was thinking, how do you, I'm sitting here literally while we're talking, thinking about how does this franchise expand? How do you expand the world of Indiana Jones? How do you tell stories that are not about Indiana Jones and introduce characters you can follow through on? And I thought of like an idea where the characters he's encountered in previous movies get together at Indiana Jones's funeral, but he's left one last unresolved adventure, one mystery, one thing he never completed. And who steps up to complete this adventure? Who steps up and does the last Indiana Jones adventure? And maybe that's a way they could pass it on to someone else. I'm just thinking off the top of my head. But yeah, I don't want to see someone else cast as Indiana Jones, at least not for a generation, and but the universe is Indiana Jones. It's you have to describe it in ways beyond Indiana Jones, and that's going to be the challenge.
Yeah. Mike, what about you? What do you want to see? What is the destiny of Indiana Jones, do you feel?
I think basically, I think they can continue the series, but not with Indy. It could be something like with the goddaughter and maybe Short Round in an adventure or something like that would be pretty awesome. I think that could be fun. I don't want to see them recast Indiana Jones. There had been talk for a while of casting Chris Pratt as Indiana Jones, and I don't want to see that. I don't want to see the further adventures of Indiana Jones, as a younger man played by somebody else. I just don't think that's necessary. Come up with new characters and such. If this is the last Indiana Jones, so be it. It ended on a great note. It ended on a very high note for me. And I don't want to see that ruined because I don't want another even number movie.
Something that I just thought about while you were both saying what you'd like to see is, you could, if Indiana Jones is real in that universe, somebody could have been inspired by him like he was as a kid, with the guy with the hat, or somebody saw him online, took one of his classes, and hears and decided his own thing. And then when he hears Indiana Jones retired, or he was just doing other stuff in the other, you could do something like that as well, where it's another character maybe doing similar things or different things. Maybe instead of religious and the occult, he focuses on something, or she focuses on something different. So that would be cool, having Indiana Jones as an inspiration, like somebody having all these like archaeology posters from archaeology conferences where maybe Indy was the keynote speaker or something. I don't know, something stupid, or they worked at the museum. I don't know. I think that could be a way to have it live on without it being Indiana.
Yeah, I can see all of that actually, and I anything that has the Indiana Jones logo on it, I'm attracted to and I'm drawn to. I've watched I'm rewatching currently the Young Indy series on Disney Plus, and it's a variety of whether good, bad, whatever. I mean, there's a lot of different things about it, but certainly if they wanted to have a adventure, Disney Plus movie or something like that with Short Round talking about where since the actor's so hot now, jump on that, right? And that's his most famous part, apart from, the one he wins the Oscar for. But and if you even, I would hope that Harrison Ford would be okay with like doing a sort of digital cameo if they did a flashback of him, an adventure with him and Short Round, like that kind of thing. I will say that a couple things. When Spielberg and Lucas first created this character with help of Philip Kaufman and Lawrence Kasdan, when that they created it with the character in mind of very similar to the serial movies of the 30s, as well as James Bond. They looked at him as very much James Bond, and like James Bond, I do feel like the character is strong enough that you could reinvent the franchise and reboot it completely with a different person. I do feel like as long as someone had the vision to do that, I think it could be pretty incredible. That's potential, right? I mean, if they're just doing it for the money, then obviously that's never a good thing. But if someone actually came and really cared and rebooted the whole franchise, I wouldn't mind seeing that. And also, during this movie, I thought that the de-aging CG was so good that I was like, you know what? I would just watch a movie with this. Like, I would just watch an hour and a half, 2-hour movie with de-aged Harrison Ford in an adventure. I thought it was well done, and I know it wasn't perfect, and I know I've heard from various people it didn't work for them because they just didn't feel like it worked. But to me, it was fine. I mean, yes, I knew it wasn't real, but within 5 years, that technology is going to be like, you can't even tell it's not a real actor, right? I mean, where
striking about that.
I'm not a huge fan of AI taking over, but in this case, it's not really quite that. It's more like just using a technology to keep some. And as long as Harrison Ford was okay with it, like, definitely don't use his likeness without his permission. But as long as he's okay with it, I'm like, and maybe even participating, providing a voice. Yes, please make him younger. Like, you can make the voice younger too. But I like that. I thought that was pretty exciting. So we'll see. I just don't feel like, I know that Spielberg and Lucas and Williams and Ford and everybody else is not on board for doing anymore. So we'll just have to see, what happens. But I find it hard to believe that Disney bought this license and is not going to do anything with it ever again. It's just not doesn't make sense. So anyway, all right. So as far as this movie goes, I think all of us are giving it a thumbs up.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Thumbs up. Take that, reviewers from well, let us know once you've seen the whole movie fully awake. All right, Matt?
Absolutely.
And so we want to know what you guys think. So please reach out to us. And in the meantime, we're going to take a quick break and we're going to be back to close out the show.
Okay, YouTube listeners and viewers, thank you for joining us. Of course, as always, let's talk a little bit more. There's always been, other type of, there's Alan Quartermain. There has been other adventurers like Indiana Jones and such. Could you do any, and I'm throwing this out to anyone here, any other like book franchise or anything that you think could replace us or anything like that? Because like James Bond, there's, other spy thrillers and stuff. And, Indiana Jones, it's the same way because, Indiana Jones is, harken back to a lot of the swashbuckler adventurers from the 30s and 40s. So, anything that comes to mind.
I'm thinking Robert Langdon from the Dan Brown series with the Angels and Demons and the what was the other movie with Tom Hanks? Yeah, the Da Vinci Code. Like that had a lot of religious occult things. There was a lot of action and adventure. That was more about following like a ton of clues, and there was a lot more like stuff involved.
Mm-hmm.
But that was definitely. I mean, I really enjoyed the books, and the movies were okay. The books were so much better. But something like that is though that's not as far back as the pulp that Indiana Jones. That's really the 20s and 30s and dealing with less technology. But I think that's something that brings it into present time a little bit, where you could even see people being like, "Oh, I want to be an adventurer. I want to do this," and I think that that could be really interesting.
Very much so. Anyone else?
Yeah, there is one. They've already had a couple of attempts at a movie series with her, and that's Lara Croft, the Tomb Raider.
Definitely inspired by Indiana Jones, and yes, fell on their face trying to bring her to life on film. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, that's the one that comes to mind. But I also thought of, from video games, you have the Uncharted a somewhat successful first movie, but anyone who's played the games know it's also owes a lot of debt to Indiana Jones and these type of adventures. So I think that would be another franchise that could succeed in this vein.
I think another attempt that was made to sort of capture this kind of adventure spirit was the Mummy movie with Brendan Fraser as Rick O'Connell.
Oh, very much so.
And I really had hopes that that would really continue and become a really great series. Unfortunately, I think as they went on, they got worse. I think was there 4 of them, but 3 or 4 of them, right?
Yes.
And unfortunately, that wasn't to happen. But I do feel like that sort of adventure could be brought back. I don't know if those particular characters. Disney has a pretty good track record when it comes to bringing adventure movies to light. With Pirates of the Caribbean, I heard the Jungle Cruise movie is actually pretty fun. So I haven't seen that yet, but I've heard it's kind of a fun adventure stuff.
I actually did watch that one, so
yeah?
I'm happy I've watched something that you haven't. It was fun for sure, and you could definitely see how they were, because I think they were trying to do like a Jungle Cruise ride, or maybe they like how they were kind of using that to be like, you want to get in the jungle and do all this. It was a lot of fun, and it definitely had some supernatural elements to it that I wasn't expecting when I got into it. But I do the thing where like I don't really always watch trailers, and I don't always read what the movie is about. Sometimes I just want to go in and like some things that other people wouldn't think are spoilers. I'm like, no, I don't want to know anything. I don't want to know if they guest starred.
I know that feeling.
Yeah, I just want to go in and have a good time watching this movie. So sometimes I'll be like, oh, that person. They'll be like, yeah, they were like on the poster. I was like, I didn't see the So yeah, the movie worth watching, I think at least once.
No, totally understand that and everything. Another one starring Dwayne Johnson that, is Jumanji.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I know they're working on a third one, if I remember correctly. So, so that's another continuing series that I don't think it had the charm that Indiana Jones had by any means, or, but I liked I saw the first 2 and I thought they were really well done. And I liked how there were multiple characters, just not one lead in it too. So I thought, that's kind of cool too. So definitely think, there's a possibility with those.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's I wish there were, like in the 80s, and I think spawned off by Star Wars and this one, Raiders of the Lost Ark. I think there was a lot of adventure movies that came out. And yeah, some of them were more sci-fi, some of them were more fantasy, some of them were present day, et cetera, et cetera. But adventure was more of a kind of movie that came out when I was growing up than it is now. And I'm always a fan of bringing more adventure back into movies. And irregardless of whether it's Indiana Jones or not, I love this time frame. I mean, I'm not a big fan of like, World War II or anything, but as in real life, the events that happened and everything like that. But this aesthetic with pre-war, the way that the world was and all of that stuff. I mean, I know that there was a lot of problematic issues back then, so you have to sort of tiptoe around a lot of that stuff, or you can deal with it, in a respectful way. But I like that aesthetic too of that time frame, and so I'm always attracted to movies that take place around then, like in the 30s.
Mm-hmm. No, totally makes sense. Totally makes sense. It's the same way that they've been talking about for the next James Bond movies, that possibly Bond will be taking place in the 1960s during the Cold War.
Yeah,
everything.
Yeah.
Certain characters fit better in certain eras, and I think that could work really well with Indiana Jones. And so I'd be curious to see, and he doesn't have to fight Nazis every single time.
Oh, but it's good.
It is always fun. But he also does better, and it's a better movie when it's the Nazis. So
exactly.
So it'll be very interesting to see what we got there, folks. Well, I'd be amiss. One person we didn't bring up at all while we were doing our review, we didn't even bring up Toby Jones. in the movie. And he is such a great character actor, and he is fantastic in whatever he does. And he was just wonderful, and as Basil, and it was great in the flashbacks, and then also in the opening scenes, and it was just a ton of fun.
He is so good. I mean, yeah, he's a character actor for sure. You're not going to see him be the leading man of any movie anytime soon, or at least major studio movie anyway. But yet he's able to, and sometimes doing the same character, like he's able to either play like a really nebbishy good guy, or a really evil bad guy, or like somebody who's completely lost their mind, or like, I mean, he has quite a range that you never know what you're going to get with him. Like as great as Mads is, he plays a bad guy a lot. And I'm not saying he's phoning it in here, because I think he's having a lot of fun with this one, but it's not a stretch for him to play a bad guy. But you never know what you're going to get with Toby, whether or not he's going to, turn heel on Indy or not. Like you don't know, because the actor is so good at playing all different things.
Exactly.
Yeah, I loved how convincing he was. Like, I was just watching birds, like all the stuff that happened, and like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just some like homeboy out in the woods late at night looking for birds. Like, he totally was very convincing until he wasn't.
Until all of a sudden he saw the Dial of Destiny, and he was like, "Oh, I'm breaking my cover now."
Yeah.
Exactly.
Who was a character in the first and third movies from the university?
Marcus.
Yes. That he sort of fulfilled that role in the flashback scenes. I thought of this.
Oh, very much so. Very, very much so. He got lost in his own library. Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought the third movie did Marcus a little disservice, acting like he was just like a fish out of water or whatever. But I like that actor a lot. Dan Himalia was great, and they kind of paid tribute to him in the last movie, even though they disrespected it too. But yeah, I like him as well. And in here, you don't really. I guess Toby is kind of the replacement for him in that. So yeah,
yeah,
very much so. And it would have been interesting, because they could have easily made, Helena, his daughter or something too.
Yeah,
but it was fine. It was fine.
Yeah. It seems like you always have to have in an Indiana Jones movie. You always have to have like an old British guy to help Indy along somehow. Like whether it's Toby Jones or Denham Elliott or who's it in the fourth movie? Is it Jim Broadbent? No, I can't remember who plays the guy in the university in that one too. But yeah, it seems like Indy needs one of those guys.
Well, I mean, the British museums have a penchant for
it's true
having lots of other people's stuff, so it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Oh, I was in this movie when they found all like King Ramsay's chair and everything that the Nazis had taken. I was like, and then I saw that the Allies had destroyed the bridge ahead. I was like, oh God, all that stuff is going to get destroyed with the train and everything. And it was just like, and I was happy to see that it wasn't. And so some of it might have been shot up, but it's, okay. This was spoils of war, as we like to say. So thank you, YouTube folks. That's going to wrap up our bonus section for tonight. Let's go ahead and close up the show now. So that's going to wrap up another episode of the Air Station 1 podcast. I want to thank our guests for being here. ToniAnn, thank you so much. Since you're the Indiana Jones newbie, you were awesome.
Always happy to be here.
Welcome to the world of Dr. Jones.
Yes.
Yes. Now she has to watch Young Indiana Jones Adventures.
I heard that I had missed an entry because he is in an episode.
Harrison Ford is actually in an episode.
Yeah.
Of that,
Yes, he is. Yep. And then there's another actor playing Harrison Ford, much older, too.
Yes, and apparently there's a saxophone involved.
Yes.
Spoilers. So yeah, definitely. Anything you want to shout out about or promote?
I I think that anybody who is on the fence about watching this or The Flash, if it's still playing wherever you are, should go see both of them.
Awesome. No, definitely agree with that. Mr. Matt, anything you want to shout out about, sir?
Just like to say anyone who's interested in my opinions, not that you really should be, but mine or my wife, Elaine, we create a Facebook page where we document what we watch. Sometimes we'll live comment on it. And it's called Elaine and Matt Watch Television.
Awesome.
And just, search for it, like it, and comment if it's a show or movie you're interested in, and let us know what you think of it. We'd love to have more interaction with people and hear what people think about it.
Definitely.
I have to ask: did Elaine went with you to the movies, right? To see the Dial of Destiny?
She did. Yes.
Did she stay awake?
Yes, she did. Yes, she did. She did better than I did.
Did she enjoy it?
She was elbowing me, so I didn't have like long stretches of being asleep.
Did she enjoy it?
Yeah, her thing is she likes it a lot better than Crystal Skulls, but it's still not quite up to the level of the '80s films. But I think that's a general consensus of what I'm hearing out there.
Yeah, I think so too.
No, totally makes sense.
I had the wrong Sweatman on.
Yep, you should have had the other one on there. And Mr. Mike, we've made it through another one, my friend.
I'm kidding, man. It's great to have you on the show again. Yeah, as always, it's my pleasure, man. This one was, I didn't know how this was going to be, man. I really had misgivings. I thought this was not going to be a good movie at all. And I was very surprised, pleasantly so, that it was decent.
Cool. Anything you want to shout out about, sir?
I do. Look, there's been a lot of news about TCM, Turner Classic Movies, and out there lately, especially some stuff that might be going away or whatever, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. I don't control any of that, but I do know that one of my favorite things on TCM is Eddie Muller's Noir Alley. And the host of that, no matter if he's going to be on the channel or not, but he has just written a book called Noir Bar, which is cocktails inspired by the world of film noir. It's a TCM book, but it's beautifully put together. It's it's basically a drink book of mixtures. He's a mixologist as well. He talks a little bit about noir movies and maybe the best drinks for those, some of ones that exist, some of ones appear in the movies themselves, and some of the cocktails he's just created by himself. Like he just has created 4 specifically because he was inspired by these movies. But it's a great looking book. Look, I don't drink much at all as far as mixed drinks or alcohol or anything like that. I just can't do it financially or health wise. So, I don't mind looking, and these pictures, the photography is just so gorgeous on these. I just want to try them and watch all these movies with Eddie. So it's a great book. I definitely recommend checking it out. It's called Eddie Muller's Noir Bar.
Awesome. That is very cool. One just real quick, do a quick shout out. Definitely had a very interesting vacation. Went up to visit some family that I haven't seen in quite some time. I haven't been up to Maryland in, probably 5 years or so. And it was just awesome to see some friends, see some relatives, and got to go to a baseball game up in Baltimore. And it's interesting to see, how, things change, because when you grow up in a certain area, but you haven't been back there in quite a few years, to see what's changed and everything. And it's like, it's neat to, places you remember are gone, or other places are still there and are as grand as you always remember it. And that's kind of the fun thing about it. And, just take appreciation for what you got, folks. It's pretty awesome when you do get to do it and, get to spend time with people you haven't seen, or see friends you haven't seen in quite some time. And it just feels like yesterday since you seen everything, which is pretty cool. And you know what? It's really, really awesome to do. So, just take a little, look around and, be thankful for what you have and everything. It's pretty cool. All right, that's going to wrap up the episode for tonight. As always, we love to thank you guys for joining us. It's always a great thing. And thanks for listening to the Earth Station One podcast. Always remember that we couldn't do this without you. If you wanted to support the podcast, please check out our TeePublic store and get some really cool ESO swag. Also, remember, if you want to listen to the show before the rest of the world, please, why not join the ESO Network Patreon? For as little as $1 a month, you could help support the Earth Station One podcast and the rest of the ESO Network. Check out the ESO Network Patreon at patreon.com/ESO Network. While we're at it, we'd also like to thank some of our patrons for being, and thank you. Let's thank Heather Stevenson, Tyra Burton, Elizabeth Liney, Kevin Roburn, Matt Sweatman. Hey, I know that guy. Kevin Cafferty, and Jenn Adams. Thanks as always and everything for all our patrons. And we always like to say, we couldn't do this without you folks. Remember also, we want to hear from you. Feedback at Earth Station One is the best way to get in touch with us. Remember, you could also find Earth Station One wherever fine podcasts are found. And now Earth Station One could also be found in video format up on YouTube. Please subscribe and tell all your friends about us. And as we always like to say, like and subscribe, like and subscribe. It's the best way to do it. And also, I know some folks do listen to us up on Stitcher Radio, and we just got notice that as of August 29th, Stitcher is going away. So as you know, there's going to be definitely other places. We are on every other media player you could think of for us to be found. So definitely continue, please, listening and supporting our Station One while you're at it. So it's pretty cool with that. On behalf of myself, Mike Faber, of course, Mr. Michael Gordon, Mr. Matt Sweatman, and Ms. ToniAnn Marini, thank you so much. And she has a friend with her, which is really, really awesome. Who do we have with us, ToniAnn?
This is Professor Zoom.
Awesome. Hi, Professor Zoom.
Hey, hi, Bubby. He's a little, there's fireworks outside, so
I can understand that. We're getting it.
He needs a little extra love and attention. But all of my cats are named after superheroes, so he got to be named after a supervillain.
Awesome. Hopefully he's a lot nicer than Professor Zoom. So
he is. He thinks everybody is his best friend. And the only way to catch him, because he is a little black dog, is with a flash.
Awesome.
Dun, dun.
Dun, 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 dun. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll see you next time. Peace. And we are done.
You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.